You know, when you use an AI like ChatGPT or Gemini, it really does feel like magic, right? But what's actually going on under the hood? Well, in this explainer, we're going to pull back the curtain and demystify how these incredible tools really work.
I mean, it really can feel like you're talking to something intelligent, maybe even thoughtful. They write poetry, they can debug computer code, they can have conversations that seem genuinely insightful, so it's no wonder they feel so human.
But here's the wild part. What if I told you that all of that complexity, all of that apparent intelligence, it all boils down to one single, remarkably simple idea? And by the end of this, I promise you, you'll understand exactly what that is. No advanced math degree required.
Okay, so what is this big secret? It's a game, a prediction game. See, the fundamental job of a large language model, an LLM, isn't to think or understand the way we do. Nope. Its one and only goal is to predict what comes next. Predicting what exactly? Well, it's predicting the next token. And a token is just a tiny piece of language. For common words like cat or the, a token might be the whole word. But for longer or rarer words, it might be a syllable or just a piece of a word, like run and ning to make up the word running.
So just picture this constant loop, right? The model looks at all the text so far. It calculates the odds for every single possible token that could come next. It picks the most likely one, and then it just tacks it onto the end of the sentence. Then it does it all over again. That's it. Token by token, that's how it builds an entire response. And this is the really mind-bending part. What looks to us like reasoning or understanding is just a side effect. To get really, really good at just predicting the next word, the model has to accidentally learn about grammar, facts about the world, and even a little bit of logic. It's all just a byproduct of playing this prediction game on a ridiculously massive scale. Okay, but wait a second. Computers don't speak English, right? They speak in numbers. So how do we get from words to something a computer can actually process? Well, it all starts with a process called tokenization. And this is where it gets really clever. Tokenization is super efficient. Like we said, common words get their own token. But the really smart part is how it deals with new or rare words. It just breaks them down into smaller, known pieces. And what that means is the model has a truly open vocabulary. You can throw literally any word at it, and it can handle it. All right, once we have our tokens, each one gets turned into something called a vector. And don't let the name scare you. You can just think of a vector as a really long list of numbers. That list is basically a mathematical fingerprint for the token, capturing its meaning and how it relates to other tokens. This is the language the computer speaks. So what do we do with all of these lists of numbers? Well, they get fed into the engine that powers pretty much all of modern AI, an architecture known as the transformer. And folks, this is where the real revolution begins. The transformer was introduced back in 2017 in this landmark research paper with a pretty revealing title, Attention is All You Need. And that one word, attention, that's the key, that's the breakthrough that made everything from ChatGPT to Gemini possible. So here's the core idea of self-attention at work. It's this incredible mechanism that lets every single token look at all the other tokens in a sentence and figure out which ones are the most important for understanding the context. So, in our example, what is the capital of France? To figure out what comes next, the model learns to pay special attention to the relationship between capital and France. That connection is what screams, the answer is Paris. A transformer is basically built by stacking these layers on top of each other. Each layer has two main parts. First, you've got the self-attention layer, which is all about finding those relationships between tokens. Then there's a feed-forward layer, which kind of thinks about each token individually, adding some depth. And you just repeat this whole block dozens, sometimes even hundreds of times. That's how the model builds up this incredibly rich, nuanced understanding of the text. Right, so this brings us to a really big question. After the AI has read like a huge chunk of the internet, where does all of that knowledge actually live? It's not as simple as you might think. Yeah, the training process is just massive. It's unbelievably expensive and complex. It starts with the model just digesting billions and billions of tokens, basically reading a huge chunk of the internet to learn patterns. Then it gets fine-tuned on examples of questions and answers to learn how to follow our instructions. And finally, there's a step called reinforcement learning from human feedback, or RLHF, which is where humans rank its responses to teach it to be more helpful and, not say crazy things. So, after all that training, the model's brain, all its internal numbers, gets frozen. It doesn't learn anymore when you chat with it. So, where is a simple fact like Paris is the capital of France actually stored inside this thing?
And the answer is kind of wild. It's nowhere and everywhere at the same time. See, knowledge isn't stored in these neat little files like on a computer. Instead, a fact just emerges from a specific pattern of connections firing across billions of parameters throughout the entire model. It's distributed.
And this is exactly why AIs hallucinate, when they make up stuff with total confidence. The model doesn't have a fact checker built in. It's just generating the sequence of tokens that is the most statistically plausible, the one that sounds the most right based on all the patterns it's learned. And sometimes what sounds plausible just isn't true.
Okay, so let's put all the pieces together and really draw the line between what these systems are actually doing and what it just feels like they're doing.
So here's the entire journey, from your keyboard to its response. You type something. Your text gets chopped up into tokens. Those tokens get turned into those long lists of numbers called vectors. The transformer architecture processes all of them, using that attention mechanism to figure out the context. And then, at the very end of it all, it just makes its best guess for the single most likely next token. And the whole cycle just repeats.
And what's really cool is that this same basic logic works for more than just text. Those multimodal models that can see images, they work by breaking an image down into little patches. And then they just treat each patch as another kind of token. They mix these image tokens and text tokens together in the same system, which lets them reason about both at the same time.
All right, you ready? Here's the super quick summary of everything. 1. Everything, text, images, whatever, becomes tokens, then vectors. 2. A transformer processes them using attention. 3. The model's only job is to predict the next token again and again and again. 4. Knowledge isn't in a database. It lives as distributed patterns. And 5. Hallucinations happen because what's probable isn't always what's true.
So the big question, are these things actually thinking? Do they have consciousness, goals? Nope. They are incredibly, mind-bogglingly sophisticated pattern-matching machines. They are statistical engines that have learned the patterns of human language so well that their output looks intelligent. But at its very core, modern AI isn't thinking, it's predicting. And that one simple idea, well, it's changed everything.